Hello everybody, welcome back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting Podcast, and this is episode 74. Straight out of the gate, I'm going to say I apologise if I sound particularly nasally. I have succumbed to the cold that my daughter brought home, and so I currently feel like I'm trying to breathe through a bog. So I'm going to just try and struggle through, and hopefully it's not too distracting. Oh, there we go. I always find it really uncomfortable to sit in this chair sometimes. It's not the most comfortable chair. Anyway, I have got a fair bit of knitting progress to share with you today, and I'm actually really excited to sit down because I have my first finished object of 2026 to share with you. Very nearly said 2025 there. I feel like you constantly have to like second guess which year you're saying until like March, or at least I do anyway. So yeah, I've got a fair bit of knitting to share. I have a finished object, I have 2 whips, but let's kick it off with what I'm wearing. So I actually have a fair few bits of knitwear on today. So I've got my December bow that I actually knit up for my daughter. This is in Filcolana Saga and Tilia in the colours Peach Blossom. If I turn around, then you can actually see it. So that is that. And then I've got my Daft cardigan, which is a pattern by Rebecca Clow. I knit this up in Filcolana Panilla and a load of mini skeins from The Lonely Knitter. I think they were all Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon themed mini skeins. And then I also have a pair of, oh my goodness, sailor slippers. I have put the Rico sock stop on the bottom of these, but I'm not sure if I've done it correctly because they do seem to be falling off the little dots that I've done, so I might have to redo that. If you watch my Vlogmas, then you'll know that I had a right old mare with this pattern, and I did finally manage to get these knitted up between Christmas and New Year. I think I completely forgot to mention them in my last podcast, but these are the sailor slippers that I finished. I ended up using hot pink and light rose or something, and then electric blue and dark navy. And yeah, these ones actually fit. The I-cord is a little bit tight on them, but they do stay on my feet really well. I think it is starting to stretch out as I wear them, so I'm kind of glad that it was a little bit tight the first time, because otherwise I think they'd start to fall off as I wander around the house. So yeah, that is what I am wearing today, a huge array of knitwear. I also have some knitted socks on as well. These are the Colorwork Cuff Club from last year's January chart. I'll put a picture of them up here though, because I'm not going to try and contort myself so that you can see my foot again, because I nearly fell off the chair. So yeah, that is what I'm wearing today. I hope you've all had a lovely couple of weeks. I hope you've got lots of crafting done and everything. So I guess without any further waffle, let's get into my finished objects. So for my finished object, I've got my husband's modified colour tip tee. This is a pattern by Emily Curtis, but it's supposed to look like this. And it's supposed to be a fingering weight set-in sleeve women's t-shirt with a pocket and half-twisted rib. And I obviously don't knit mine to be like that. I've been making them for my husband. So this is what it looks like. I might actually have to stand up and hold this up, to be honest, because it's quite big. So this is what it looks like. Actually, I am going to have to stand up. Bear with. Okay. Dog is here now as well. So this is the finished jumper. Obviously looks nothing like what the pattern is supposed to look like, but this is the third version of this that I have knit now. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to be able to sit back down in my chair because there's a dog here. Okay, so now we have a furry co-host. So yeah, quite a lot of progress since the last time I showed this to you. I can't remember where I was the last time. I think I had done, perhaps I'd done the neckband and I was doing the first sleeve. So obviously since then I have done the second sleeve and I've finished the body as well, and obviously finished the first sleeve. This felt like it was taking an absolute age to knit, but actually I think in the grand scheme of it, it's not really taken that long, considering the fact that this was a fingering weight men's garment on a relatively small gauge. I ended up getting 24.5 stitches and 33 rows per 10 centimeters. I used a 3.25 millimeter needle for my main fabric and a 3 millimeter needle for my ribbing. I changed up the ribbing from the half twisted rib to just standard 1x1 rib, like I did on the other two of these that I knit. The last two though, I used Sandnes Garn Tin Pig Gint in various colours of grey and a contrast colour for the edgings. Whereas this time I went stash diving and I used some Filcolana Panilla, which is technically a sport weight. So this one is a bit thicker, a bit more dense, a bit heavier than the other two that I've knit for him. But actually I think that it's kind of worked out as a nice option compared to the other two, because the other two are obviously identical. This one is a little bit warmer, a little bit thicker, and so it kind of fits into a different category of like when he can wear it. My husband works in an office that has air conditioning, and it's kind of very temperature controlled, so it's very much always the same temperature. It's always kind of like fingering weight jumper temperature, so he gets a lot of wear out of these. The other two he's worn in rotation pretty much since I finished them in July of 2024. I think I finished the first one, and he's pretty much worn these two jumpers on rotation since then. So hopefully this one is also going to slot in on that, because although it's a little bit thicker, it's still not like a very thick, warm jumper. It's not like a DK weight or an Aran or anything. So yeah, they're very heavily worn. They're very heavily loved. They're definitely worth the effort that has taken to get the measurements and everything. Like the trial and error that I went through on the first one. So yeah, I'm happy to knit them for him. They just feel like they're taking forever because it's a lot of just round and round stockinette in grey, which is not my favourite thing to do. I do really like texture, cables, Colorwork, all that kind of thing. But knowing that these get so much wear and so much love really does sort of make them worth all the effort. So like I say, the Panilla is a bit thicker than the Tin Pig in. I did still get gauge on the same needles though, which is why this is slightly denser. The colours that I used, the light grey is colour 957. And then the contrast edgings are all done in this one, which is 357. And I think this is called Saffron. But this is a really lovely, like rusty sort of burgundy. It's absolutely stunning. I really, really like this. I think I might actually end up ordering some more of this so that I can knit him probably one of these in this colour with a different coloured edging. So yeah, I ended up using 422 grams. So I think I ended up with using 8 balls of the grey and then obviously some of the burgundy. So that works out as 1,477 meters. So yeah, I did end up making a couple of modifications to this one compared to the other two that I've knit. So they're all just cosmetic. So I ended up adding in these little pearl rows at the neck and on the ends of the sleeves and also on the end of the body, just to break up the stockinette a little bit, just to give it a little bit more interest and also kind of just make it a little bit different to the other ones. The other thing that I did was that on the others, when I changed colours to do the contrast edging on the neckline, I only did a couple of rounds in the contrast colour and then I changed back to the main colour and did the rest of the ribbing in that. This one, I just couldn't be bothered to change colours again. I ended up just doing all of the inside of the neckband in the contrast colour. You can't see it from the outside. You can't even see it like where I've picked up the stitches to knit down the neckband because this is a double folded neckband. And so I'm quite happy with it. I think it kind of just means that I didn't have to sew in an extra end, didn't have to change colours again. And yeah, you can't see it from the outside. So I'm very happy with how that turned out. I also did the same thing as I did on the second one, which I didn't do on the first version of this. And when I was changing colours to do the contrast edgings, instead of just doing all of the ribbing in the main colour and then doing the double knitting that I do for the bind off in the contrast colour and then just doing the sewn bind off in the contrast colour, I changed and did one knit round so that I don't get any kind of weird sort of bits of main colour on the first row of the contrast colour where the pearl bumps are. So I knit one round, then I did one round of ribbing, and then I did the 2 rounds of double knit and the bind off. And although it makes it a little bit thicker at the end, I think it just makes it look a lot cleaner, a lot more crisp. And I did that on all of the edgings, apart from obviously the neckband, where I just did 4.5 centimetres of 1x1 rib in the main colour, and then I knit one round in the contrast colour, and then I did 5.5 centimetres of 1x1 rib in the contrast colour, and then I just did the usual method that I do to connect my 2 bits of folded neckband, where when I come to bind off, I pick up the back of the knit stitch and put it from the row where I picked up the stitches, and then put it on my needle, knit those 2 together with the live stitch, and then bind off. And then with the pearl stitches, I just knit them and bind them off. So then I'm only actually attaching every other stitch, but it just allows so much more stretch in the neckband, which has always worked out for me in the past. So that's how I did it on this one as well. And it's just given me a really nice stretchy neckband, but still enough structure in there that it's not going to like really stretch out over time. So yeah, that is my husband's jumper. I did actually take some measurements from this because I do want to knit him a couple of other jumpers this year, and I always find it difficult to get the sizing. So I thought if I get the measurements from this, which is one of his favourite fits of jumper, then I can kind of pick and choose and make alterations to the sizing of other jumpers that I'm going to make for him, so I can make sure that they all fit in a way that he really likes. Because often I find that the yoke depths can be a little bit short for his preference, especially with the kind of t-shirts that he likes to wear. He doesn't like it when the yoke depth on his jumper is smaller than the yoke depth on his t-shirt. And then, you know, when it sometimes makes it kind of like ride up and come all the way up into your armpit, and then like the sleeves of your t-shirt are all the way up here. He doesn't like that. So I know that these ones don't do that. So I've taken a load of measurements to make sure that I can get future jumpers right. So I've ended up with a yoke depth of 24 centimetres from the top of the shoulder to the armpit. The chest circumference is 108 centimetres, and the body length from the underarm, including the ribbing at the bottom, is 42 centimetres. And then the sleeve length from the underarm to the end of the ribbing is 51 centimetres. So that I think is going to be really helpful. I now know that he likes a good sort of like 24 to 25 centimetres positive ease. And that's the kind of thing that I'm really trying to do a lot of this year, to make sure that I like take better notes of what I've done to alter any patterns, or what like the preferred fits are for all of us, so that I can make sure that I'm making us things that we are going to reach for a lot more than stuff that just fits in with like a trend or anything. Not that I really knit the trends anyway, but you know, it's nice to get something that fits really, really well that people are going to reach for a lot, rather than something that's just going to sit at the back of the wardrobe and not get worn. So yeah, that is my husband's jumper. For the sizings, I ended up knitting size 7 for the back panel and the short rows, and then I knit until it reaches 17 centimetres, and I do 8 increase rounds for the armpit. And then for the fronts, I pick up the stitches for size 7, but I knit the neckband increases for size 5. And then I continue knitting until that reaches the same length. I think it was like 20 centimetres. Yeah, so I knit the front panel until it reached 19 centimetres. And then I did the increases for the underarm to match the back, so I had the same amount of stitches on the back and front. Joined them on the underarm with the size 7 increase stitches for the underarm, and then I knit size 5 for the sleeve cap. And then for the sleeves, I then decreased every 6 rounds 21 times, and then I knit about 9 rounds of stockinette just to get a little bit of extra length. And then I did the ribbing. There's 4 centimetres of ribbing roughly, apart from the neckband, which I think is about 4.5 centimetres. And then for the body, I just knit straight down until I reached the end. I did one knit round in the smaller needles, one purl round in the smaller needles, then I knit another round, and then I did the ribbing, and then I did the bind off with a standard tubular bind off and everything. So yeah, there's not too much fun like mixing of sizes. It's basically just knitting sizes 5 and sizes 7. The neckband is also picked up for size 5. So yeah, that's how I managed to get the fit to match my husband's body shape and his preferred fit and ease and everything in that jumper. And I don't think I'd really go and hunt for another one now. I'm pretty sure that this formula is kind of just what I'm going to stick with for his like go-to jumpers, and I'm very happy with how it's worked out, and he's very happy with it as well. So I cast this on the 31st of December and I cast it off on the 26th of January. So it took me a grand total of 27 days to knit, which isn't too bad, to be honest. I'm very impressed with that, and I'm very glad that I've decided to move into this sort of more monogamous way of knitting my garments and my larger projects, so that I actually get them off the needles and finished. So it turned out to be, because this was supposed to be his Christmas present, but obviously I didn't get it knit in time for Christmas. So it's turned out to be not so much of a late Christmas present as I had initially thought it would be. And cost-wise, the pattern costs £5.80. Obviously, I've knit 3 of them now for my husband. I've also knit one for myself. So it's really kind of paying off. The cost per use is going down as I get through making these for my husband especially. And yarn-wise, I ended up using 9 balls of the Panilla. So at £4.70 a ball, that works out as £42.30. And so the grand total for this pattern was £48.10. So not too shabby, to be honest. I'm pretty impressed with that. And I think I'll be using the Panilla again to make these, because this one is a bit softer than his other ones, but I'll have to see how it wears, because obviously this is Panilla as well, and this pills quite a lot. Whereas the ones that I've made him out of tin pigment don't really pill very much at all. So yeah, we'll just have to see as time goes by how that one wears compared to the other two. Okay, so that was my finished object. Now we are moving into my whips. So my first whip is my Advent socks. I showed these last week as well. These are just a pair of vanilla socks that I'm knitting up out of the Spin and Blether 24-day self-striping Advent skeins that I got. And I've also got a 20-gram undyed mini that I'm using for my heels, cuffs and toes. And I'm doing a short row heel. I'm doing toe up. So I started obviously at the toe, increased until I got to 64 stitches, and then I just knit the foot. I used the short row heel from Stone Knit's Charming Colorwork Socks book. It's my go-to short row heel. I find it fits my foot really well, so I ended up doing the size medium heel on that. I just omitted the, I think it's increases that you have to do to get to the right stitch count, because her Colorwork socks are knit on a different stitch count, or at least the one that I used. I used the Tiptoe Through the Tulips version to knit these. And then I was just knitting on the leg. So I think I was here on the first sock last time I showed these to you. These markers came with the Advent, and they're really nice actually. So yeah, I was there. So then I've just continued knitting up the rest of the leg. And then I've done a 2x2 rib on the top. I did change to a 2mm needle. I was using a 2.25. So I changed to a 2mm needle for the ribbing, which is what I usually do on my cuff down socks. And then I did a couple of rounds of stockinette on a 2.25mm needle and just bound off loosely. But these do not fit very well. The actual like stockinette portion, the leg and the foot, are absolutely fine. I'm very, very happy with those. It's the ribbing. It's very, very tight on my calf. It's not very comfortable. And like the extra stretch that I thought I was going to get from doing a rolled top didn't really work out. So I put these back in the bag and haven't really worked on them for a little while, because I was sort of like, I'm not really sure what to do. I don't know if I should rip it out and I should do like 72 stitches down the, like up the leg, so that I've got a bit more room in there, or yeah, I just wasn't really sure what to do with it. I didn't want to carry on knitting on the second sock, which I've done a couple of rounds on. I was here last time I showed them, and I've just done this green stripe so that I'm ready to put the heel in. Yeah, I haven't done any more work on them since I finished the ribbing on this one because I just wasn't sure what to do. And I thought they were just going to end up sitting in a bag, or I was going to have to rip them back and make them shorter. Yeah, I wasn't really sure where to go with it. And then I had a bit of a brainwave. So I think back in 2024, I knit the Totally Rad ribbed socks by Summer Lee. So this is one of them. And they have this folded stockinette cuff. And these are also very, very long and knit on 64 stitches. So what I thought I could do is have another look through this pattern, because they're roughly the same length in leg, like once you get to the top. So this is the folded cuff, and then obviously this is the ribbing. So they start at roughly the same point on both of these socks. So what I thought I could do is go back and have a look at the instructions for the top of this sock and add them onto this one in the undyed and have just like a folded cuff, because these ones don't really stay up very well. They're very, very slouchy, but I like that in these socks. I can pull them up if I want to. If I'm wearing leggings, they stay up a bit better. If they're just in my jeans, they do slouch down. But I actually think that that's kind of going to be what I want for these ones. I want them to be a little bit more slouchy. So I think I'm going to try that. I'm going to pull back the ribbing on this. I should have enough yarn from doing the ribbing to do this folded edge without really needing to join in anymore. I mean, I have plenty if I do, but I'd rather not have to sew in the extra ends. But yeah, I think that is going to be where I go with these. And I think it's going to work out fine. I don't think it's going to be too much of a deviation from my initial kind of thoughts on what I thought these were going to look like. I think I'd rather just have them so that I can actually wear them. And then once I have gone back in and done this modification to this one, I can then get going on this one. So yeah, don't you just love it when that happens? Like, you've completely stalled on a project, you leave it alone for like a good 2 or 3 days, and it was literally like as I was brushing my teeth and getting ready for bed that I had this brainwave of like, oh, hang on, I have knit another pair of socks that's roughly the same length. Why don't I just make them the same as those? So yeah, that is what I'm going to do with these to make them wearable. And I have kind of re-sparked my motivation to get going on these now. So hopefully these won't be sitting on my needles for too much longer, because I do want to get another small project cast on. I did earlier in the week put out my making project bags and late winter knitting plans, and in that I spoke about wanting to knit my husband some gloves, but I don't want to get those gloves cast on until I have finished these socks, because I want to only have one big project and one small project on the needles at one time. So yeah, now that I have got a solution for my problem, it means that I can get back to these and I can get my gloves cast on as soon as they are finished. So those are my Advent socks at the moment. And so I cast those on December the 1st, and they have currently been on my needles for 60 days. And that brings me to my last whip of today. I feel like I'm talking at a million miles a minute, but I feel like if I stop talking, then my voice is going to get worse. It's a bit of a nasty cold, this one. But I guess it's just the time of year. Whenever my daughter goes back to school, I feel like it's the question of not if I'm going to get ill, it's when I'm going to get ill, because it's suddenly going back into an environment where there's so many kids with so many illnesses. It's just inevitable at this point. So yeah, my final whip is my new like big garment cast on. I've got it sitting in this bag that I made from the Rosie Caldwell quilted bucket drawstring bag pattern. I made this in a vlog that I put out last week, which also contained my late winter knitting plans if you missed it. I'll have it linked down below. Also, thank you for the warm reception of my All the Garments I Knit in 2025 video that I put out last week. Very, very grateful for anybody who's gone and watched that. If you haven't and you want to see it, I will also link it down in the description box below. words difficult. But yeah, anyway, I have cast on a new garment, and this is my Advent project. So I decided this year that I didn't want to use my Advent in December. I wanted to open it all up, see what all the colours are, and then pick a project and start working it up in January instead. And actually, I really, really like that way of working from an Advent. Previously, all of the Advents that I've had have been fades, which have been absolutely lovely. But this one wasn't, and because I wasn't going to know sort of roughly the order of the colours or know that they weren't all going to work together like one after another, I'm much happier with the decision to just like open them up and then work with them in January, because I have manoeuvred my colours around a little bit to get the like contrast that I want for this pattern. So this is the Kintra by Rebecca Clow, and I am knitting up the fingering weight version. This pattern comes in both fingering weight and DK, and I have obviously chosen the fingering weight version because I have a fingering weight Advent. So my Advent was the Lost Wood Advent from Loom, which I got on the alpaca silk cashmere base, and I have a yarn band in here somewhere that does have that base written down. So it's 70% alpaca, 20% silk, 10% cashmere. So I got the 12-day Advent. So I have 12 mini skeins, which are all 20 gram, 80 meter minis. And then I have 2 of the main skeins, which are 100 gram, 400 meter main skeins. And so this is the main colour. And I think this is called Moonset. I did have the yarn band in here, but can I find it? No, I cannot. Oh, hang on, here it is. Yeah, so this is called Moonset, and I have, like I say, 2 of these. So this will be my collar, my sleeves, and the body, and then the yoke is in all of the mini skeins, and it's like a 1x1 Colorwork motif. I'm sure everybody has seen this before. It's kind of been making the rounds. I think lots of people have chosen it for their Advents. So this is what my yoke is looking like so far. I am knitting up size 2. I had a bit of a problem getting gauge with this. So the pattern recommends a 3.5mm needle, and I did my swatch in my main colour in a 3.5. I started it, and then I measured my gauge halfway through the swatch without blocking it, and I was getting 21 stitches, and I think I needed 25. So I was pretty sure that, as I know that an alpaca silk cashmere tends to grow with blocking, I was pretty sure that a 3.5mm needle was just not going to work for me. I was going to end up with too few stitches in 10 centimeters, and the fabric was really gapey and I just wasn't happy with it. So I ripped out my swatch before I'd even blocked it, because I was like, there's no point in blocking this because it's going to end up being way too big anyway. So I then went down to a 3mm needle, because I thought, if I'm getting 21 stitches on a 3.5, then I don't want to go down to a 3.25 and then find out that that's still too big. I'd rather go down to a 3mm, and then I can kind of make a decision whether or not I need to go up to a 3.25 or down to a 2.75, or if the 3mm is going to work for me. So this is my swatch on a 3mm. I think the fabric is much more sort of solid. It's very, very drapey, but I, again, didn't quite get gauge on a 3mm needle. So I have gone up to a 3.25. My gauge on my 3mm needles was 26 stitches and 35 rows. And I have gone up to a 3.25 to get somewhere in the middle. I'm hoping that I'm going to end up with 25 stitches, but I'm not fussed if I end up with like 24 or 23 and a half. I think that it's going to be, that's still going to work out really well for this fabric, because this is quite dense. And so I think actually having it a little bit more kind of loose isn't going to make it too sort of gappy and see-through. So yeah, that also helps me on my gauge front. So I ended up knitting size 2 because the recommended ease in this pattern is up to 16 centimetres of positive ease. And I knew that I probably wanted a bit more than that. So size 2 will give me 17 centimetres of positive ease across my chest. But I knit up the Petite sweater back in November, and that has like 20 odd centimetres of positive ease, and I really like the fit of that. Although it's a DK weight pattern, I probably want slightly less for a fingering weight because it's going to be more drapey. So I'm kind of hoping that I'm going to end up closer to that amount of positive ease than to the 16 centimetres. And I hope that using the 3.25mm needle is going to help me get that. So yeah, that was my kind of gauge dilemma, which wasn't really much of a dilemma at all. It just meant that I had to kind of make some decisions and do a bit of measuring. So yeah, I am very happy with the fact that I've gone up to a 3.25. It's much easier to knit with on a 3.25, and I kind of am much happier with the fabric that I'm getting. Although because it's 1x1 colourwork for the yoke, and I know what my colourwork gauge is like, I know that it's quite loose. I have gone down to a 3mm needle for my colourwork gauge, and I think that's working out really well for me. You can't see my floats behind it. It's not too tight. I'm not getting any puckering. This is just because my needle cable is not long enough. So yeah, I think it's looking absolutely beautiful. I think all the colourworks are working. I think all the colours are working really nicely together. I really love like the different earthy tones that there are in this advent. I think it works really well for this pattern. But like I say, I'm very happy that I decided to open the advent first and then start knitting once I'd opened all of them, because I have had to do a little bit of colour management. So the way that this advent worked is that you had 12 mini skeins, and as I was opening them, I realised that some of them were actually quite similar. So days 6 and 7, desperately trying not to do that stupid 6-7 thing that my daughter loves to come up to me and do. Went to a panto actually, and they did that at the panto, which was kind of irritating. So yeah, there's that. So yeah, this is day 6 and this is day 7. Day 6 is called Forager and day 7 is called Alderwood, and they are very similar. So if I was just to work through the advent, I was going to end up with like a band of colourwork in the middle that just basically looked like one big brown line, which I didn't think was going to look particularly good against all of the other kind of like high contrast 1x1 colourwork that I've got in here. So I do still have a bit in here that's quite similar, but it's not to the point where they're both exactly the same colour. You can see that they are different. They're just more similar than the other ones. So what I ended up doing was splitting the advent into 2. So I had one set that was days 1 to 6, and then the other one was days 7 to 12, and then I've been working them together like that. So days 1 and 7, days 2 and 8, day 3 and 9, that kind of thing. So then days 6 and 7 are never actually next to each other, and then I've kind of moved them around so that they're also not like one after another either. So yeah, it's worked out so that they're not next to each other either in the way that the colours are offset, because you have one working for like a couple of rounds and then halfway through that one you then change the other one, so they all kind of meld together a bit, and there's no, it's not just stripes. So yeah, I've managed to kind of completely avoid the two very similar colours being right next to each other, and I think it's working out really well. I really like the increase method for this yoke. So I usually do make one left and make one right, and this pattern is written so that you do like a left leaning increase and a right leaning increase by picking up from a couple of rows below and knitting that stitch with your current stitches to then make a new stitch. And I think it just makes it look much more seamless. There's no like weird sort of hole or anything where it is. It makes it sort of all fairly invisible. I mean, obviously you can see whether you end up with 2 of the same colour next to each other after doing an increase for a little while, but then when the next one slots in, it just looks like here, I think it just looks much nicer. I think it looks much cleaner and it's less noticeable in the yoke. So yeah, I'm really happy with how those are turning out. I have altered the pattern ever so slightly in the fact that I have not knit my neckband first. I just don't like doing that. I like to start with the yoke, knit that, and then go back and pick up stitches and knit the ribbing for the collar on afterwards. I just find that it gives me a lot more structure at the neckband and stops it kind of coming all the way out and stretching out a lot. And it means that I don't have to go in and put any elastic in either. I've never had to do that with any of the ones that I've picked up stitches from. And because this is an alpaca silk cashmere, it doesn't have as much memory as like a 100% wool would. And it does want to stretch and drape and all that kind of thing. It's just the nature of the fabric. So I think it's going to work better for the yarn that I'm using to do a pickup and knit on neckband instead of one that you just go straight into the yoke, just to give it a little bit more structure at the neckband. So I'm almost halfway through the yoke now. I've used all of my colours once, and yeah, like I say, I just absolutely love how this is turning out, and it's just really easy, kind of methodical knitting. It's not difficult at all. There's no like difficult stitch pattern or anything. The colourwork's really easy to memorise because you're essentially just knitting one colour and then the next colour and then one colour and the next colour, and alternating every stitch apart from your increase rounds. So yeah, it's been really easy to follow. I'm very happy with how it's turning out, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to it. Although the rounds already feel very, very long because it's a fingering weight colourwork garment, because it's so easy to do, it just feels like it's just flying off my needles, and this yarn is just an absolute dream to work with. It's so soft and silky and smooth, and it's already got quite a nice like halo coming from the alpaca, which I don't know if you'll be able to see. But yeah, I really, really like working with this yarn. I think it's really lovely. I'm not sure on my like end spaghetti that I've got going on. I have been knitting over my ends so that I don't have tons to sew in at the end. But because it's such a slippery yarn, I've been worried that they might start coming undone. So I'm glad that I've kind of been doing it as I go so I can kind of keep an eye on them. And none of them have come undone yet. So I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. I'm sure once it's blocked, they'll kind of like grip into each other a bit more. But yeah, it's a very slippery yarn. It feels like fluid. It almost feels liquid as you're knitting with it. It's very silky, but it is very, very luxurious, and I really do like it. I think it's going to be an absolutely wonderful garment once it's done, and feel very kind of luxurious. So yes, so that is my Kintra progress so far. And I cast this on January the 26th. So this has currently been on my needles for 4 days. It's just absolutely flying. I'm just really enjoying it. And I absolutely love this advent. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a fair bit left over in the mini skeins. I'll have to think up something else to make with those. So yeah, I'll put a picture of the advent here so you can kind of see what all the colours look like in order as well. Because obviously showing them to you in here is not going to be the easiest. So yeah, colour management's been quite easy as well, thanks to this bag really, because I've been putting one of my mini skeins in like one pocket and then I've been putting the other mini skein in the other pocket, and so then when I need to swap colours I've just been twisting the bag round, so that the yarns don't end up getting twisted and tangled around each other. So that's been really helpful as well. So yeah, that is my Kintra, and I think that's everything I've got to share today. I don't have any yarn acquisitions. Oh, actually, one thing I will mention that I forgot to mention last week. If I can get it off the desk. So back in November, maybe it was, or maybe it was in Vlogmas, I was talking about how I wanted to replace my ball winder, and I ended up getting one for Christmas. I'm sure my husband must have been listening in to me talk about my woes with my yarn ball winder. And so he ended up getting me this wooden one. So this is the Knit Pro natural wood ball winder. This rubber band is supposed to go around here, but it does recommend that you don't leave it on when you're not using it so that the rubber band doesn't get stretched out. So yeah, I am really enjoying having it at the moment. I know lots of people said that it was a bit of a pain to have this flat wheel to wind it, but I'm not finding it too much of an issue. I'm actually finding it really easy to use because I tend to stand up when I'm winding my yarn. I don't find that it makes my wrist ache or anything. So yeah, it's been working out really, really nicely. It makes much bigger cakes. It's made it much easier to wind my yarn. And because there's no like gears in here, and it's much smoother, I don't find that the yarn gets wrapped around this, and because there's no like oil or anything on here, if it ever did, I don't think I'd have the same problem that I had with my other one. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this if you are in the market for a new ball winder. I think my husband got it from Wool Warehouse in the end. So yeah, I am very happy with that. It does also clamp onto the desk, and I think it looks nice just sat over there on my desk. It also matches my Swift, which is quite nice as well. So yeah, that is everything that I have to share today. I will be starting the mammoth, well, what feels like the mammoth task of going through my yarn stash next week. So I think I'm probably going to film that. So that'll probably be one of the next videos that you see, depending on how long it takes to like actually do the sorting out and get it edited and everything. If not, then I guess I will be back with another podcast. So yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful couple of weeks, and I will catch up with you again in my next video. Happy making!